Victor and Ayan walked together side by side as they made their way toward the matriarch's tent. Ayan turned to Victor and spoke, sharing some insights about their way of life. She mentioned that if Victor didn't have a place to sleep, he could use a friend's hammock, and if he felt hungry, he could rely on the generosity of those who were more affluent. Ayan emphasized that this was the way the Balaks lived, creating a sense of familiarity and homeliness within their community. However, Victor expressed his observation, noting that it seemed the Balaks didn't prioritize private assets. Soon, they arrived outside a grand tent, and Ayan pointed out that they had reached the matriarch's dwelling. Ayan entered the tent and announced their arrival, addressing the matriarch as mother. This revelation startled Victor, causing him to contemplate the connection between Ayan and the matriarch. The matriarch rose from her seat and acknowledged their presence, remarking that she had brought the young boy who had been a topic of discussion. This statement surprised Ayan, who exclaimed her confusion, denying any involvement in such conversations. Meanwhile, Victor realized that Ayan was the matriarch's daughter and made connections in his mind. He looked directly at the matriarch and acknowledged her true identity as the Night Fox, the female Balak warrior who had left a scar on Hugo's nose bridge. He reflected on the challenges he had faced in the past, recalling how he couldn't traverse the landscape of the La Rouge et La Noire mountain due to her influence. Curiosity lingered as he pondered the outcome if his past self had engaged in a confrontation with her. Victor assessed the situation, considering his chances of survival. Head-on combat and assassination were out of the question, both at 0% probability. The only viable option seemed to be escaping, offering a 20% possibility of survival. Victor contemplated these odds, mindful of the danger he potentially faced in the matriarch's presence. The matriarch directed her gaze towards Victor and remarked that she had seen his face before. Victor's mind raced, wondering if the matriarch could somehow sense his connection to Hugo through instinct alone. However, Ayan interjected, explaining that most Imperial men tend to look similar. Curiosity piqued, the matriarch inquired about Ayan's intentions regarding Victor, describing him as no different from a cripple. Ayan responded, stating that Victor would be useful once he received proper treatment, as he was the one who had attacked Madame Eight Legs. The matriarch cautioned Ayan, suggesting that taking action without understanding one's place might have unforeseen consequences. She then shifted her focus to Victor and expressed that his physical well-being was inconsequential, as long as his seed was fine. Before the matriarch could elaborate, Ayan interjected nervously, revealing her true intention. She stammered that she planned to use Victor as a slave, deviating from her previous statements. Surprised by this sudden change, the matriarch questioned Ayan's inconsistent statements. Ayan hurriedly clarified, stating that she required a slave to assist her during hunts. The matriarch gently patted Ayan's head, acknowledging that it was the owner's prerogative to decide what they wished to do with their slave. Ayan, with a blush on her face, gazed at Victor. Meanwhile, Victor stood in the center of the tent, observing the beam that supported its structure, his thoughts momentarily shifting away from the unfolding conversation. After leaving the matriarch's tent, Victor initiated a conversation with Ayan, expressing his curiosity. He asked for her name, to which Ayan reacted in shock, berating Victor for daring to ask questions as a slave. Undeterred, Victor clarified that he had no intention of addressing her as master, hence his request for her name. With a blush on her face, Ayan reluctantly revealed her name as Ayan. Victor introduced himself as Victor and inquired about Ayan's instructions. Ayan shouted indignantly, protesting against a slave addressing her by name. However, she then smirked and revealed her first order to Victor, to construct a house where he would reside from now on. Ayan's inner thoughts reveled in the opportunity to assert her authority and rebalance the hierarchy between them. She believed that imperial individuals like Victor would be incompetent in building a house, thus emphasizing her supposed mastery over him. Lost in thought, Victor eventually responded to the order, expressing a smile and stating that he found the task to be enjoyable. Time passed, and Ayan stood with a shocked expression on her face as she witnessed the result of Victor's work, a tent standing before her. She wondered why Victor, despite his injured body, displayed such skill in building the tent. Observing the tools she had brought for Victor, Ayan contemplated their uselessness if Victor continued to excel in the building. Meanwhile, Victor smiled, reflecting on his past experiences. During times of destruction, swordsmen's survival was limited by their expertise solely in swordsmanship. To thrive in extreme situations, one needed to acquire a diverse range of survival skills. Ayan noticed the presence of drains outside the tent and remarked on their perfection. Victor then brought up the observation that the matriarch's tent appeared unstable. Ayan, shocked by this revelation, questioned Vikir about her mother's house. Vikir explained that in its current state, during rainy seasons, the ground around the central pillar of the tent would shake, potentially causing water leakage. He offered a solution, proposing to mix limey dirt and gravel from the opposite hill to create bricks. He would then reinforce them by spreading oil and burning it. Ayan, in agreement, instructed Vikir to proceed with the plan. Vikir collected soil and poured it into a container. After preparing the necessary materials, he used a cast to shape the bricks and dried them by heating them over a fire. Finally, Vikir and Ayan arrived at the matriarch's tent, where Ayan explained their intentions to her mother. After the tent was fixed, the matriarch looked on in shock, expressing her frustration at previous failed attempts to repair the roof. She realized that the problem lay with the pillar. With a smile, the matriarch commended Ayan, acknowledging that her daughter had found a truly useful male. She then issued an order to Vikir, instructing him to handle tedious matters like this around the barracks from now on. Sometime later, Vikir was washing clothes near a water source when Ayan called out to him. She initiated a conversation, questioning whether he found it exhausting to slave away, and suggesting that he become an official member of their tribe. Vikir responded that slaving away wasn't too bad, internally noting that this peaceful life was preferable to his previous experiences with the Baskervilles or living in the underdog city. Ayan acknowledged that Vikir seemed disciplined and commented that it would be challenging for a slave to complain. Vikir insisted that it really wasn't that bad, but Ayan disagreed, asserting that tough and tedious work couldn't be easy. As they began to head back, Ayan urged Vikir not to have that attitude and to follow her. She offered to help him in terms of survival and adjusting to their tribe. If he performed well, she promised to untie the rope that bound him. Vikir looked at her with interest and asked what he needed to do. Ayan smiled and said that he was finally being honest. She then challenged him to go on a hunt and capture a huge prey. Vikir was intrigued by the proposition and questioned her about the hunt. Ayan explained to Vikir that the tribe's warriors had been unable to catch large enough prey recently, resulting in the growing children going without meat. She emphasized that if Vikir could bring in a huge prey, it would not be unrealistic for his title to change from slave to commoner. Playfully, Ayan slapped Vikir's back and mentioned that he seemed capable of moving lighter objects, so his role would be to assist her. As Ayan jokingly reminded Vikir that he should be grateful for being the slave of the Balak's hunting commander, Vikir felt a pang of pain from her slap on his back. However, after a moment of thought, he agreed to go along with her plan. Ayan's face beamed with a smile, and a slight blush appeared on her cheeks. She then stated that they would be leaving tomorrow for the hunt. When Vikir questioned her smile, Ayan retorted, denying that she was actually smiling. Unbeknownst to them, a figure secretly observed their conversation. It was Ahan, who looked upon Ayan happily engaging with Vikir, but his heart was filled with jealousy and anger. He couldn't help but regard Vikir as a disgusting bastard.